The View, which may be put on hiatus. Guys, this is something else. So yesterday we talked a little bit about this. The View, I've said for a while, is just not economical for Disney's ABC to be producing. I mean, they've got very expensive talent, Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar, maybe Sunny costs a pretty penny. I don't know about the others, but they're paying a lot in salaries. They're paying a lot in staffs. They've already had layoffs on the show, and I'm still looking at it going, how do you guys make this thing work, especially in a competitive environment like we have now with streaming? Well, they kind of let a little something slip on the show just yesterday. Somehow Joy Behar came out and said that they might be ending, that they might be going on that they are going on a hiatus, that they're going on a hiatus. And then she's like, oh, wait, was I not supposed to say that? And they were like, oh, well, too bad. I guess you already did say it. And she's like, oops, cat's out of the bag. Well, then the White House actually responded to this. And the White House is like, yeah, this hiatus might be a little bit bigger than you thought. And they sort of referenced or had a sly reference to what happened with Stephen Colbert. Don't forget that Skydance Paramount merger just went through. It was approved by the FCC last night. $36 billion, I think, that CBS had to award Donald Trump. And so, everybody's talking about, oh, were the two things correlated? Well, they shouldn't be, but I'm just saying he got somewhere around 36 million out of it because he alleged that CBS artificially edited that Kamala Harris interview to try and make her seem smarter, therefore reflecting their bias. But let me show you first The View and what they had to say.
And before we go on hiatus, we only have one more show after this. I'm allowed to say that, right?
Too late now.
So it doesn't really matter. Yeah.
Before we go, I wanted to tell people that the tide is turning. The tide is turning, and things are changing. I mean, the ultimate irony would be that Rupert Murdoch will take him down.
Yeah.
Fox News, who created the monster, will take him down.
Well, we can talk about that. Because also the Wall Street Journal is getting sued over that letter, that birthday letter. And so he's suing them for some $10 billion. But before we get to that, I actually think there's a real shot that this particular show goes away. I know we've talked about that a lot for a long time, and the ratings last year weren't very good. They've improved them a little bit, but what advertiser actually wants to be on this show? Think about it. Why would you want to advertise on this show right now, given the sort of level of toxicity? It's a very, very toxic program. You've seen all the clips. I'm not going to play them for you. Don't worry again today. You know what they are, and there's a lack of responsibility, if you would, among so many of these players. We can get to Rupert Murdoch in a moment, but here, take a look at this. So the White House released a statement from one of their press people saying Joy Behar is an irrelevant loser suffering from a severe case of Trump derangement syndrome. It is no surprise that The View's ratings hit an all-time low last year. She should self-reflect on her own jealousy of President Trump's historic popularity before her show is the next to be pulled off air. So I think, and this is my own sort of assessment from an economic viewpoint, actually, there's a political component to it too, in that Bob Iger is under a lot of pressure and Disney's under a lot of pressure, and the FCC is conducting an investigation. Brandon Carr has already sent multiple letters. You know all that. And as a result of that pressure, and even the $16 million that they had to pay, courtesy of Georgie Poo, who still manages to have that weekend news show, right? Even though he's the former PR person for one Bill Clinton, George Stephanopoulos I'm talking about, and the $16 million Disney had to pay, ABC had to pay as a result of his recklessness. Look, there's a real shot that The View becomes next in line, because there's a lot of recklessness on that show. And there's sort of a refusal to kind of really speak truth. I know that they've got like one conservative on there and she tries to do a decent job mitigating some of that. But there's a lot of reason, yes, from a political perspective, given what's going on with the FCC, to get rid of the show. But the real reason, I'm going to tell you the real reason, is just because of the changing media landscape in which we're all living. and streaming having taken over everything. They just started streaming a version of the show, The View, on the weekend. Like, think about that. They just started that. Like, it's taken them a while, right? So they're playing catch up. They don't really understand this new medium out there in the real world. YouTube's totally taken over, guys. I'm telling you, I read an article the other day talking about how YouTube is like killing it. I don't have the exact numbers off the top of my head, but they're beating all of these other platforms and entities. And what is the future for a show like The View, where you have to have a live studio audience and you have to employ massive amounts of staff and you got 40 people behind the cameras and in the control room, and you know where I'm going with this. It doesn't make sense from a cost perspective. And so if you're Disney and you're already up against it, you're looking for opportunities to be able to have some savings, and this may be one of them. Meanwhile, as I said, you get the headache of, for goodness sakes, Brendan Carr breathing down your back over this whole DEI scandal, and you may be facing more fines as a result of Brandon. For sure. You've also got the pressure of your ABC affiliates, maybe not even seeing their affiliations renewed. He's brought that one up too, because he's saying people don't trust their local news anymore. And why should all these affiliates all over the country, which the FCC controls the airwaves on, why should they be forced to pay for ABC's coverage? That's how it works. Basically, they pay a fee to ABC. ABC in turn provides them with shows like The View and ABC World News Tonight and some of the network programming. And Brendan's like, look, they don't want to pay for this, so maybe we should just make all those things go away. So that's the real threat, truly, for Whoopi Goldberg and for Joy Behar, that at some point Bob Iger's like, I just don't want to deal with this anymore. This is too much of a headache. The talent themselves, they are too much of a headache. There was a report just a couple of weeks ago that Bob Iger actually spoke to them, all of the talent on The View, and tried to encourage them to do other stories like, hey, entertainment, maybe some lifestyle stories. And they're like, no, we're doubling down. All except for Whoopi, actually. Whoopi has been walking an interesting line. Perhaps she knows she's the one that's most in target at this moment in time. You also consider not just the political heat, but any possible difficulty that ABC may have with future mergers. This is what people are pointing to, right? With Paramount and Skydance. They got the deal through. What do you know? The FCC approved it just last night after Colbert is gone. Again, I actually think the Colbert leaving thing is not really neither here nor there, because that was just a very bad show that was losing money, losing a lot of money. And for some reason, I realize there are people that do believe that you should continue losing money on shows. I'm not a believer in that. My feeling is, as a red-blooded American capitalist, if the show is losing money, the show should not be on the air. And this one was losing something like $30, $40 million a year. And yet now they want to sue. They're actually looking for Letitia, the Writers Guild is looking for Letitia James to help them out, because they're saying, why were we canceled? Our ratings were so good. Well, it doesn't matter. Your ratings could have been great. But even if you've got great ratings, you understand if you're losing money, that's not the idea. That's not the objective. CBS doesn't need to lose any more money. So I find it kind of funny. Let me see if I have the soundbite for you, because there's a guy that went on to CNN and he was somehow saying they needed to keep this thing going and going and going and going because, why not? Who cares? It's the best rated show. And if it's a brand, well, the brand is the be all end all. And I'm like, hello, are you people a bunch of commies? For goodness sakes, it's got to make money. It's business.
Work is saying this was financial. This was financial. CBS has a hell of a lot of problems. Okay, we know that. Most media has a hell of a lot of problems. They're saying, they didn't say this, but reportedly the show lost up to $40 million last year. Okay, so that's a lot of money. But as I said, it is the top rated show. I mean, when you hear this is financial, there's nothing else to see here. Do you think that's right?
No, I don't. And I don't for a couple of reasons. I mean, first, this show has not taken any of the steps that other late night shows have taken to cut costs to stay on the air. And also, profit and loss reports don't account for a lot of ways in which a show like The Late Show with Stephen Colbert brings value to CBS and to Paramount. The Late Show is referenced in almost every quarterly Paramount investor call that we could find.
Right.
Wow. And I think that and that's because of the tremendous brand value that this has for the company. When you think about CBS, one of the first people you think about is Stephen Colbert. And so I think that the wrong question is, was there financial problems? I think the question is, why was this canceled? Was it because of a
well, and as you point out, if you have the top rated show with something that is part of pop culture and, ubiquitous in American culture, then would you try to do everything you could to keep it, as opposed to jettisoning it so quickly? Now, this brings.
No, you're not really going to try and keep it unless, the people at CBS and Paramount are just really, really bad business people. And, one would have to think that they tried. But when it's losing $30 or $40 million a year, you don't really care that it's a top brand anymore. And by the way, maybe it's the top brand at CBS, but out in the real world, no one cares. In part because they are dinosaurs over there. They're such dinosaurs that they will not allow you to use any of their clips. Like, I'd love to show you some David Letterman clips. Forgive me. What's his name? Colbert clips. See how irrelevant he really is? But you can't see any of the Colbert clips, and you want to know why? Oh, there's going to be a copyright strike because they haven't actually adapted to the modern era where people clip things like this show and it goes viral. And that's actually a good thing, right? Because then it gets talked about the next day. But the kids aren't talking about anything that Stephen Colbert says because he's not relevant. He's not part of the conversation. He hasn't figured out the streaming aspect of the business, and now he's going to be. Bye-bye, bye-bye, bye-bye.